Hello, everyone. Welcome to the DMV Business Show. I'm your host, Otto Sevilla, and today I have a very special guest for you, Kim Bryden. Kim is the founder and CEO of Cureate. Welcome to the show, Kim.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. The pleasure is all mine. So before we go into your journey, if you can just give
Mhm.
the audience, Kim, a general overview of who is Cureate.
So Cureate's been around in DC, headquartered for 8 years now, and we exist to shift the dollar back into our local communities by building up an empowered supply to meet this changing consumer demand. And the way in which we do that is through Curate courses, which is our bespoke 10-course entrepreneurship education curriculum. And the demand side is that we work with anchor institutions like universities, hospitals, convention centers to embed as their local purchasing team to shift their money back into the purchasing of small and local business goods. So we're really on both sides of the equation, understanding essentially supply and demand matchmaking, or dare I say, curating the connection.
I love that.
Mhm.
I'm sure growing up, I don't know if you had this envision, this in mind.
Mhm.
Are you from around the area here locally, the DMV area?
I have lived here for 16 years now, but I'm from New Jersey. And
Ah,
so
okay, East Coast.
yes, I grew up in the farmland part of New Jersey. People don't always think of it being the Garden State, but yeah, I grew up across the street from a cow and corn farm.
Oh, so not city New Jersey, more very urban farm-like setting. I'm sorry, not
Yeah,
urban, suburban.
yeah, like suburban rural, exactly.
Okay. What
Just
part of New
sprawl
Jersey?
away. It's a small town called Branchburg. It's at the end of one of the NJ transit lines, but like I said, we're more in the farm country part of Jersey.
Sure. Did you have a farm? Did you grow up in a farm?
No, it was just across the street, but my whole life was going to farmers markets, and my town or the town adjacent to mine has a hot air balloon festival every year. And so I have these very idyllic memories of us like running through farms to chase hot air balloons.
How was it growing up in that area of Jersey?
Mm, you know, I always felt like my side of town was um, even more rural because when we would go trick or treating, there was long walks between everyone's houses. Whereas the other side of town, it was more like townhouses and planned communities. And so I think that really contributed to my childhood was being able to have space to like run around and play. I could run down the street to the cul-de-sac and meet up with my friends. Like that was very freeing for me as someone who's also like pretty artsy and creative. It was just nice to have space to explore. But the other part of it was I love the city. I've clearly lived in DC now for 16 years. And so the fact that the town next to mine was the end of the NJ transit line that went into New York was very formative for me in high school. I was the person who would take the train into the city on the weekends and like go to jazz clubs. so so 18-year-old me was thrilled about that.
Nice. How long is that commute in the train to
It
New
was
York?
like an hour and 10.
Oh, not bad. Okay.
Yeah. So where I grew up, it's like an hour-ish to New York, about an hour 15 to Philly, and another hour or so to the shore. So it
Okay.
was very equidistant to each of these landmarks.
And your parents growing up, and growing up in a rural area. And I know you said going to high school, you were going into the city, Manhattan. There, were they okay, or were they?
They were like, "What is this girl doing?" Yeah. Well, I'm the oldest of three girls, and my sisters are 5 and 7 years younger than me. And so I think I've always had this like mom, big boss energy my whole life. And so part of me was like, I'm just going to do what I want to do.
Sure.
And also my sisters were just in the house also growing up. So there was a big age gap between us. Imagine being, you know, 13 and your sisters are still in elementary school. So that's just a very different stage of life. And so I think for my parents, my mom grew up also in New Jersey, close to Rutgers University, and my dad grew up in upstate New York. And they met through a blind date. through my mom's jazzercise instructor, very 80s. And yeah, that's actually like pretty formative to us because we as a family, we love dancing and we make dance music videos together. And so anyway, all of this story is to share with you like this blend of both having space and ability to explore, but also being connected to the city was really important to me. And that being able to like transition between that like rural and urban divide, if you will, it comes
Sure.
very naturally to me.
I'm sure you must love TikTok then if you're into dancing.
I'm not on TikTok.
Kim,
I
come
I
on.
feel like I'm pre TikTok. I think my family has been making music videos pre TikTok. That I feel like that must be true. But yeah, my mom and sisters all over it, but not me.
You should
Maybe
definitely get into
someday.
it. I mean, I definitely do not dance, but I think it's a great platform if you're into the entertainment, music, dancing, and so on.
Hmm. Yeah, it's really my stress relief. That's how I get it out.
That's good. That's good. So you did all through high school, rural parts of New Jersey, and then what happened after high school?
Then I went to American University and
Oh,
I was there until the financial collapse of 2009. That was quite the time. And so um, I was supposed to finish in 2010, but I finished early. And I thought I would have like a leg up, like, oh, you finished in 3 years. Look at you out in the world. Terrible time to finish school. No jobs are out there. But I had gone to school for public communication in Spanish, and my minor was in the arts. And so I thought I was going to be a museum curator. That's really what I wanted to do. It plan big exhibits. The way my mind works is what's this high level theme or message that we're trying to get across to the world, down to like the tactical details of the font on the wall. I just love thinking about that user experience. Um, but you know, there weren't really a lot of jobs in the arts during a financial collapse. And so I had in part put myself through school by hostessing parties for Northwest families. I would take coats and make drinks and, you know, they'd pay me to be the hostess. And through one of these soirees, I just started learning more about like different jobs that were open. And it led me to working at the Alcoholic Beverage Regulation Administration, the DC government agency that handles alcohol in the district. And I then was a contract specialist where I would do imports into the district or temporary permits for events or parties. And I started meeting all of these small business owners who would come into the office. And this is where I would say the big shift or sort of aha in my life occurred, because at that time, and still today, there's a big narrative around small business, the backbone of the American economy, right? That's like something people say. And yet I would see these small businesses come in and be like, oh, this process, oh, finally, you know how to use a computer. You know, it was just this like drag. And I thought, wait, I thought we were supposed to be creating an easy, you know, again, the whole user experience thing. Why is it so challenging for a small business to start and then also continue operations? So I got really interested in that. How do people start and open, particularly food businesses in the district? And from there, I ended up getting hired by Whole Foods to oversee their marketing and business development in Northern Virginia. And then I was recruited to open the Foggy Bottom Whole Foods in 2011. And so, yeah, that's what really kickstarted this food journey. Perhaps I see food as like a form of art anyway.
it is. Is that what sort of called you to the food, or what was there anything else besides being a form of art?
Yeah, I mean, I do really believe that food is like someone's heart on a plate. The stories that one tells through their creation of food, and I also believe in the like economic driver food has on a macro level, like from a GDP standpoint, ag down to a community level of a cafe or, you know, the ice cream shop that's
Hmm.
that's not just driving economic transactions and circulating money from within the community, but also creating place and creating the actual physical sense of community. So I like that food has that, it spans so many different, it's science, it's government, it's politics, it just touches so many things. And that's how my mind works. So I love that food crosses so many sectors.
It's so true. I'm in commercial real estate, and a lot of my clients are in the food industry, whether restaurants or just other type of food users. And it's just, I love working with them, and it's just something about it. You can't. There's something about breaking bread with someone else, and
Mhm.
it's just very important. It just in many cultures.
Absolutely. And I think it's also really important, especially coming out of COVID. It's something that we're seeing resonate across both our vendors and our buyers, is the recognition of how the global efficient supply chain doesn't always work. And so the importance of understanding what is grown and produced in your backyard, I feel, has always been our mantra, but is now a part of somewhat of the cultural zeitgeist of people recognizing, like, oh, wait, when something happens and everyone's like, buy gift cards to your favorite restaurant so that they survive. Our mantra is like, every day you're an investor with your dollar. Like every day where you show up, what you buy matters. And so I'm really glad to see that that's become more of a cultural consciousness now.
Yeah. So it sounds like Whole Foods was sort of the entrance for you into the food world. Were you with them for a while, or?
So after the opening of the Foggy Bottom store, I got really interested in how online behavior was affecting offline shopping, because I was, near all these university students. So I was very curious as to how their shopping habits were changing. This was in the era of Tumblr. So we were picking up on the whole like Tumblr, Twitter, Instagram beginning phases here. So I went back to school for digital media management and analytics at Georgetown to try and understand more about this new way of consumer behavior. And that then moved me into the food tech space. And I worked for two different food tech companies. The last one was based in New York, and the product was putting chefs in people's homes. So you could go on the site and say, I'm having a dinner party for 10 people. My budget's $80 a person, make me an offer. And then the chef would bid on you and say the menu they could do, and they'd bring it all to your house and you'd have a dinner party. And so I launched that product around the nation and opened Chicago and Austin, Seattle, and worked on New York. And what I recognized with that time was that the chefs I was working with, the talent, I realized I wanted to work more with those businesses who actually, like we were just talking about, were like bedrocks of their community. And this sort of tech sheen, like I will be the next unicorn, was less appealing to me. And so that sort of lit this fire in my belly of like, how can I work with more businesses who care about stable cash flow, actually have a business plan, really want to be hiring and growing within their community spaces? And that's what led to the launch of Cureate in 2014.
Wow. Okay. And that was, I know you said before you were opening different offices. Were you always based out of the DC area, or? Okay.
Yep, exactly. No, I never left.
Okay. That's good. So
Yeah.
then Curate opened, you said 2014,
Yep.
and now you're hanging up your shingle per se. And how was that, if I can just take you back for a brief moment, that first year?
Mm. Well, something that I've been really reflecting on, we just had our eighth birthday on September 2nd. So, yay.
Congrats.
Yeah. Something I've really been thinking about is the importance of consistency and like perseverance over time. Because I have found, particularly with working with our larger business buyer partners and clients, that it's really about showing up over and over again, that you are a reliable partner, because it's hard to build into a system that is so long-standing if you're just going to be like a blip on the radar. And so that's something I've really strived for since the beginning of Cureate, is how are we showing up like as creative problem solvers with a curious mindset of like, why does it have to be this way? Like, might we just consider a new way of doing something? And also really thinking about what does true economic empowerment look like between big and small? So those were always these core tenets circulating, but then how that manifested is what's evolved over time. So in the beginning, it was working with the individual founder, owner, operator of their respective food business, if they were launching a new product or launching into a new market, and working with them hand in hand to do so. But I'm sure anybody listening or watching here knows that cash flow is tight when you're a small business and trying to launch and scale. So if you were not at a certain stage of revenue or born into networks of wealth, like, it's very challenging. And so that's what led to the first iteration or pivot, I suppose, of Cureate in the development of Cureate courses, which is our 10-course program for emerging food and beverage businesses who have been doing their thing for some time. They're probably between 30,000 to 750,000 annual revenues. It's been either a solo founder or like husband and wife or partners who have started it, and they're at some farmers markets, maybe some coffee shops, and now they're exploring, like, now what do I do? Like, now what happens?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the exact stage of entrepreneur for Cureate courses that we look for. And then over time, graduating businesses through Cureate courses, which is over 200 now. We've gotten a lot of emails around, people knowing my background in the grocery side, like, how do I do that? How do I get in there? And I feel that it can cost a lot of money to play the game to get into the grocery side of the business. So I started looking at the other side of our food supply chain, which is food service. That would be universities, hospitals, convention centers, and how they spend their money and where does it go? Because a lot of those spaces tend to have a populace that really cares about how that money is spent, like students in a university. And so there's a lot more initiatives around sustainability and diversity, equity, and inclusion, that how you spend your money really matters. And so that's what launched the third and final arm of Cureate. So we've got the consulting piece is where it started, evolved into courses, and now the last piece is Connect, where we are facilitating those transactions for these large buyers to buy from local small business.
Was there any pivotal moment, Kim, that you can think of, whether it was the beginning, the advisory consulting part, or when you started with the courses, or even now, that sort of just shifted everything for the business?
Well, there's been a few, but I think most recent and notable is that because of COVID and its impact on all industries, but particularly food service, right? Like, there's no convention centers in a global pandemic, right? That was not happening. So the drop in business activity for that side of the business made a lot of people question, their current employment, if they were doing things right or wrong. That's what's led to our now great resignation, phase of time. But for me, a lot of folks were saying, Kim, this whole network of small businesses, is there a way for you to pivot to do direct to consumer? And I said, no, I'm not doing that. That's like an entire new business model. Other people are doing that. That's not what we're here for. Mm-hmm. And I kept saying this refrain that in nature, there are like birth and death cycles constantly. And there are people and solutions at each piece of that cycle. And I was like, we're happen to be, literally metaphorically a part of this like death cycle on so many levels, systems that no longer serve us, et cetera. And I was like, Cureate is going to be a part of the rebirth. That's what we're here for. We are a part of building a new system, a new economic order that like works for all of us. That's what we're here for. And so I got in a car and I started driving across the country to learn how other cities and towns were adapting, just to have more understanding and get out of my, mid-Atlantic bubble, if you will. And so I met the mayor of Cynthiana, Kentucky, and I went to this brewery in Southern Illinois. And anyways, I'm traversing the country and I just kept hearing this refrain over and over, like, no, we're not going to close up shop, XYZ small business owner. Like, we want to be here because we don't want to live in a world where it's just big business. Like, I will stay open in defiance of the man. Like, let's do this. And I was like, wow, okay, great. I'm glad to hear this. I thought everyone was just going to be like, oh, throwing in the towel, I'm done. And it was the exact opposite. And so anyway, I'm driving, and I get to Northwest Arkansas, which happens to be the headquarters of Walmart, Tyson's, and JB Hunt. They all are headquartered in Northwest Arkansas. And I noticed there were all these campaigns around attracting talent to the area. And so I met with Economic Development Council and started learning more about that talent attraction program and how they were building up more of the local small business scene, because people who want to live somewhere, like we talked about community and place, want to be somewhere with place-based businesses and not just Walmarts. And so like, what did that look like? And so anyway, this long story is to say that at the end of that road trip, we applied to be a part of that attraction program, and we were recruited to open a second hub in Arkansas. And so we've now had business operations there for 1.5 years.
Oh,
So
wow.
This is my long story to tell you that a huge pivotal moment has happened in the past, again, 1.5 years, where we've expanded between the Mid-Atlantic and the Heartland.
So in Arkansas, what are you doing there specifically?
Also Cureate courses
Okay.
and the beginnings of Cureate Connect. Yeah.
So the courses are live in person. They're not online.
It's both. It's hybrid.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I understand. That's great.
Exactly.
Congratulations on that.
Yeah, it's pretty great. And I've been really thinking about the similarities between these two metro areas. And of course, there are differences. I mean, that when people are like, DC, Arkansas, what?
Yeah.
Interesting jump. But they're also, the latitude of where Northwest Arkansas is to, say, Virginia is, there are somewhat similar growing seasons. There are some very interesting similarities. And so we've been brainstorming and thinking about what does it look like for entrepreneurs and our networks in both regions to also connect with each other. And so this whole idea around like, how are we centralizing a decentralized supply is something that we're really excited to explore and build with our partners who are also interested in deploying capital to underrepresented founders, or again, want to have more knowledge of the local supply system that's in their backyards, just in general for procurement, but also as like a resiliency strategy.
Kim, how do you build that network, whether here in the Mid-Atlantic or in Arkansas now, with local small business, local food businesses there?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm really excited, and I think perhaps you will have this on a different show, but we have been in partnership with a community development financial institution here in the Mid-Atlantic called Baltimore Community Lending. I'm the CEO and president, Watch and Bruce. She's amazing. And so one way in which we build this network is in partnership with other organizations who, again, are really committed to the technical assistance and building capacity for businesses who want to grow and scale. And then they're there to deploy that capital for whatever it might be, equipment purchasing, working capital loans, things like that. But I have found over time that there are a lot of programs that are a bit more expert generalist in technical assistance, which is awesome. Sometimes you just need to know, like, what is a profit and loss statement? Like, really important. But what we do with Curate courses, it's very industry specific, right? It's food and beverage industry specific support. And so in partnership with BCL, at the time of the recording of this show, we're launching 4 cohorts throughout the state of Maryland. And so we're going to be working with 10 businesses per cohort. So 40 businesses over the course of the next 10 months or so. So that's how you start building up this supply, is doing the work and starting to understand how people are looking to grow, how they want to think about what success looks like to them. A lot of accelerators are built with a very specific like end goal in mind, like you're a part of this to get into this particular, VC or this particular sales channel. We do not do that. So the goal is for you at the end to be able to clearly articulate, what does success look like for you and what capital you might need in order to get yourself to that next step. And one person from each cohort will win a $5,000 cash prize to help them when going to achieve that goal.
Hey, whatever, it goes a long way. Everything counts.
Exactly.
Are they finding you typically, these food and beverages businesses? Is it through you, Cureate, or for example, BCL or other partner organizations that you work with, or how are they typically finding you?
Yeah, both. And the work that we do out in the community, also partner organizations. This whole program is actually supported by the University of Maryland Medical System, who is the very large medical system in the state of Maryland. And so we're geographically locating these cohorts in proximity to, again, the backyard, so to speak, of these hospitals. And so really understanding the landscape of economic development departments or media outlets or partners in those specific areas that also have a vested interest in growing their communities. That's also a big part of how we get the word out, and also want to provide a value add in a win-win to those partners in those communities.
Has this program already started?
So the first cohort is going to launch in October, and applications close on Monday, September 12th, which is just around the corner.
Okay.
Just around the corner. But we have 2 other cohorts for the spring. And so the fall cohorts will be Baltimore and PG County, Charles County focus. And then the spring will be farmers and Anne Arundel, Hartford, Eastern Shore, like pre-post Bay Bridge action. So that's what's going on with these 4 cohorts. But we've previously had a cohort in DC proper. We have our cohorts happening in Arkansas. We've been in partnership with the Virginia State Business Development Center, and we've executed 6 cohorts throughout the state of Virginia. So that's, through these different partners, and just understanding the geographical location everyone's located in and who are the right players to bring around that table.
That's amazing. What's the feedback that you're hearing once the business goes through the cohort and they're, let's say, graduated from it?
One of the things that we measure is, do you do business with another person in the cohort? That's really important to us, is like, what is that peer-to-peer sales opportunity, collaboration, sharing of even Instagram networks, right? Like, how are we making sure we're uplifting one another? That's really important. We've structured the curriculum to have that peer-to-peer feedback and learning. So it's not just like instructor, student. It really is intended to be a collaborative space. And the other thing we look for, of course, is over time, what's the average revenue increase by the end of the program? Has this helped you think through where you need to focus your energy instead of just sort of throwing the spaghetti at the wall, so to speak? And so on average, we've seen a 20% increase in revenues by the end of our programs, which is pretty cool to see too.
Oh, that's awesome. I like that. That's good. What would you say drives and motivates you?
As a human?
Yes.
Like me personally.
Correct.
Oh, wow. It like never changes, and I feel like it always changes. I would say in my absolute core of core, I am someone who like thrives being in community, like understanding, like I was sharing before, from one lens of like why people buy. Like I just am someone who likes to understand the psychology and like socioeconomics of a place, but then in my heart, that like from a space of empathy and understanding, like that story part of food. That's just my friends and I, once every 3 months, we have a salon where we pick a topic and we just talk about it for 3 hours. Like that's what I do for fun. It's just like being in community and like talking about each other's stories. Like that's my idea of fun. And so I've tried to build a business around, yeah, what brings me joy. Um, and you know, just on a other side, the thing that's always evolving is me as a person. Obviously, I am aging and growing in this world as we all are, and I'm really um, desiring at some point in my life to be a mom, and I want to live in values alignment with myself to model the behavior I would hope, you know, whatever offspring I have would be proud of.
Of course. It makes complete sense. I mean, with you building, wanting to be in the community, you building the community with your business day to day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Uh,
true.
Kim, how does the team, because I know you said the instructor, are you actively teaching or do you have instructors there? Or how does that look?
Both. Yeah.
Okay.
So we are a team of 6 now, between here and Arkansas.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, some of them I teach, some we have other team members that teach. Exactly.
Is there anything in your career that you can think of right now that you're most proud of?
Mm. Taking the leap to start Curate was definitely, I'm sure many founders you speak to have that same statement, but I I would have never done it if I wasn't a part of a community of other female founders who were also starting at the same time I was. And it was very kismet that we even found each other at that point in time. We were all around, let's say, 26 to 30 years old at that time. So it was just a right time of life, the right people, and we all were champions of one another and thinking through the challenges. One of those individuals in the group with me, one of my best friends today, we took a workshop on how to avoid burnout. And I would have never known about it. She told me about it, but I
Hmm.
still think about things I learned in that class 8 years ago today. Um, so yeah, I think that's been, if I didn't, again, back to community, if I didn't have that community of other like-minded individuals, I wouldn't have taken that leap. I probably would have just stayed, you know,
Sure.
in that cycle.
When you took that class, were you still, for example, a W-2 employee or were you on
I
your
had
own?
left.
Oh, you had
Yep, I was
left
on
already.
my
Oh, so
own.
you already
Mm-hmm.
made that jump.
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
I just sort of went for it.
So I guess having that group and community sort of just reinforced for you to continuing down this road because it is a hard road.
Yeah. Yeah. And going from the mindset of like a solo entrepreneur, more freelancer, and doing things on like a project basis or
Hmm.
monthly retainers, that I had a moment where I was like, is this the life I want to continue leading, which is absolutely awesome and works for so many people? Or is there a way to have services and products that create more of the opportunity for this to be a scalable business? And so that was the next mental shift I had to make was, am I going to continue being like solo freelance and picking up projects, or what does it look like to start building an enterprise?
I love that because I feel many businesses struggle in that stage there where it's just you're a solopreneur, you're doing everything. And maybe you need to take that next level and hire maybe your first team member, your first employee. And there's a
Mm-hmm.
risk associated with that because before you were, it was just
Totally.
you.
Yep. And people ask you a lot of questions, and it's really hard because it's your baby and it's so close to you. Woof, do I know that? We actually, like in Curate courses, one of the workshops is with an executive leadership coach. And then every course's student gets a one-on-one session with them. Because I feel very strongly about this, that you have to think about yourself also in terms of the success of your business. Because there are like limiting beliefs we all have about our, past traumas we've had, beliefs that no longer serve us, that we have to work through. I think about this all the time. I have to be like, Kim, is that a fact or a feeling? Which one is it? Yeah.
I like that.
Mhm.
Is there any specific advice? You work day to day with all of these different food and beverage companies, but if someone were to come to you, whether in that industry or not, that any advice or suggestions you would give that individual, they wanted to start their company?
Mm. We've sort of adopted this Brene Brown quote on the team, clear is kind, unclear is unkind. And so maybe me more than most people, I really desire clear communication. And I would emphasize to anyone starting and running a business that an email in response to someone to just say like, confirmed, heard, instead
Mm-hmm.
of the other recipient being like, did I just get ghosted? Those little things matter over time. A thank you note. It was so great to meet you. Those touches of communication really build trust, and I think respect over time. So that's one piece. And then I would say not the other side of that, but another component is being an active listener. Over time, I've been around different people who are like salespeople in different degrees for their businesses. And I can tell when they're just ready to just make the sale and they haven't really listened to anything the person was saying to them. And so that's been another big learning that I try to impart on my team members is like really hear what the problem is that you're trying to solve. Like, even though our solutions aren't really going to change that much, you can mold what they are based on what you're hearing the problem actually is.
Sure. I had a meeting earlier today. It was exactly the same thing. Just asking better questions to try to learn
Mm,
what the other person is looking for, what they need.
yeah,
Yeah, it definitely goes a long way.
exactly.
Kim, are there any specific habits or traits you feel that you have that have helped you, whether on the business side of things or just personally?
Mm. I I think my team members would say Kim is a
Dancing.
speed. Yeah,
No, I'm
dancing.
joking. I'm joking.
I think my team members would say Kim is a speed reader. I don't know if I am, but I do consume information quickly. I don't know if that's a skill or what, but that does come in handy. I will actually say, though, that my whole life growing up, back to the arts piece, I was always in musical theater or some sort of dance show or theatrical performance. So it comes fairly naturally to me to do public speaking or be presenting, if you will. So that's start young, get over the scaredness of public speaking if you can early on in life, because it's proven to be a beneficial trait for me, at least.
Yeah, it's true. It reminds me. I had a C-level executive of a company in Baltimore, and she used to be an opera singer. And she was
Mm,
telling me how being on stage and just that presence helped her in the C-suite, which is mostly all men. I think she was the only woman,
mhm.
and this was at a young age. So she was telling me how most of the kids were outside in high school and middle school playing. She was out practicing the opera, and then yeah, it just helped her a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And
And that I love what you're saying about like owning your presence.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
I love that.
yeah.
I think first I quote Brene Brown. Now I'm going to bring up a Michelle Obama thing, but I think she had said something in her book uh, around once she realized when she would go into different rooms with world leaders or something of the sort, that it's not like anyone was more or less smart than each other. So you just sort of, sometimes I think to myself, like, everyone's just sort of making it up. So does anybody feel, sort of afraid to speak their truth because everyone's just sort of figuring it out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's a weird way to think about it, but that's what
Yeah.
I try to remember when I'm going into different spaces that feel like, oh, wow, this is like a really important person, which I'm sure that they are with all of their experience and accolades, but also at the same time, like, where are opportunities to just be a human?
Yeah, exactly. We're all humans.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say is your biggest challenge with your role today at Curate?
Mm. The exact thing that we work through with our courses students, which is how to
Okay.
continue growing the team and building a team that's in values alignment with what you're doing. And also, especially when I think employees or just people in the workforce today, myself included, want to work somewhere that has purpose, like that there's some reason of why I'm doing what I'm doing. And so I think that communication of why something's important, the intention behind it, um, can be really difficult to continuously communicate. And also, it's so important to get everyone on board and on the same page.
Yeah. What would you say now, Kim, you wish you would have known at the start of your business career?
Mm. I suppose I wish I would have known that a lot of people want small businesses and startups to go a traditional route. Let me reframe. A more traditional route of get a friends and family round, raise a seed round, then go for venture capital. This you're gonna be in TechCrunch, right? Here's an article about like valuation of X company is blah blah blah. This
Yeah.
progression. And so many people have wanted Curate to mimic that um, course.
Sure.
And I've been pretty steadfast of not going that traditional way because I like to grow a business based on earned revenue. And I find value in that. And so, not that I necessarily would have told my younger self, like, do something different, but just to be aware, like, people are going to want you to be a certain way often. And like, it's okay to not do the same thing as everyone.
Sure. It's so true. And I think also, I mean, there's a lot of people that play a role into that, especially the media, because they glamorize the next unicorn,
Mm-hmm.
billion-dollar plus valuation and all these VCs. And it's not all, but some of these businesses are not even profitable.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah. And
yeah,
are losing like 240 million a year. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. It's not actually a business. Yeah.
I'm happy that you chose this route instead of the traditional route that you're seeing out there in the media and Twitter or the TV or whatever it may be.
Yeah. And I think that, going back to what I was saying about like being a mom in the future and all that jazz, I feel really strongly about modeling the behavior I hope to also receive. Like, I'm answering your email, you should answer my email. Or like, I'm telling you that like you don't have to do it the way everyone's done it. Like I didn't do that either, right? So just being open to, back to one of those core values I said even with the team, is like being curious and saying like, well, why does it have to be that way? Like maybe it might work differently for me and the life I'm trying to lead.
You've been a mentor and advisor to all these different businesses. Have you had any mentors or advisors? And if so, what did you learn from them?
Mm. Yeah, totally varied throughout time based on how I said that group of female founders that I had in the beginning. That was like I said, so instrumental. It was more of a like peer mentorship group to former clients that then became really strong advocates and mentors post our engagement with one another, to other people in the food and beverage industry who I just really admire for the way that they view trends and things that are emerging in the space. So not necessarily like this one person has like guided my path, but dare I say it, being in community with all of these different people and picking up the lessons that they've had along the way.
It sounds like that initial woman founder group was an important important piece throughout the journey. Was that organized, or was that just randomly a couple of people got together and formed it, or how was that?
Yeah, so there's this group globally called Sandbox, and the premise of Sandbox is that what if future leaders met each other in their 20s, what might that look like for them later in life? And there were 100, I believe, hubs around the whole world. And so all of these hubs had different, chapters of individuals in their respective Sandbox hub. And I was a part of that. And this group of women was like a subsection of the DC hub.
Oh, that's good. I've never heard of Sandbox. You hear the typical YPO or EO, but are they still around?
I think a little bit.
Okay.
I don't know if as active as it was when I
Sure.
joined back in the day, but what I really appreciated and still do about the community that's there is I could show up in Lisbon, London, Mexico City, you name it, and I could contact other sandboxers in that hub, and it was like they were my friends immediately. Because again, we all convened around very similar values alignment of how we wanted to act in the world. So that was also pretty formative of me just being a global citizen and meeting people in different parts of the nation world and what they were doing.
Yeah.
I've also been a part of World Economic Forum Global Shapers, which is maybe a bit more known. But yeah, just finding these spaces where I'm so local, like that's what I think about is local economies and local economic development strategy. So I was trying to seek out spaces and places of people that had that bigger vision and like, what do I do that could apply to that or vice versa?
Sure. I love that. Coming to an end here now, Kim, what does the future look like for you and Cureate the next couple of years, maybe 3-5 years?
Well, we've got the Mid-Atlantic and the Heartland bubbling. But I'd love for us to grow down towards like Richmond, Durham, and maybe out towards Appalachia. And then from Northwest Arkansas, what does it look like to go towards Tulsa or Memphis or Dallas? What is that expansion? So I think about where we're at now as hubs and where do we like spoke off from there. And that's what, and yeah, just to continue generating more of that understanding of these local communities and how they fit into these larger procurement systems.
Sure. When you're not busy working, what do you like to do for fun in your free time?
Eat a lot.
Of course, food.
Of course, yeah.
Eat and drink.
Eat, drink, and dance.
There you go.
I'm trying to learn the piano. I decided I needed a hobby where I couldn't look at my phone. So that's my other versioning idea.
How's that coming along with the piano? Did you start this year?
Yeah, maybe I should just stick to dancing. I don't know.
It's good to learn something. I felt that way at the beginning of this year. I'm like, let me learn something. And I have a friend. He's like, let's go to the golf course. I'm like, I need something more active, man. I'm sorry. I'm not there yet. I need a little bit more mobile. So then I picked up pickleball this year.
Oh,
and I love it. Yeah, I love it. I need to get back into it.
That's awesome. I played pickleball in high school.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I couldn't believe, when it made this resurgence in popularity. I was like, I've been doing this since, early aughts. Yeah, that's a great idea. maybe I should also pick up pickleball.
Yeah, it was fun. I took some classes. I was
Mhm.
probably the youngest in the group, but
Mhm.
there were a lot of people there. I mean, they were very familiar with tennis, and they were just beating me just because I didn't play that.
Wow.
Yeah, but
Oh
it
my
was
God.
fun. And the nice thing now is my oldest started taking pickleball classes in middle school. So now I can
Mm.
go out to the court and play with him. So that'll be fun.
Oh, I love that. That's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. So if people want to find out more about you, Kim, and Curate, where can they go to? Where can they get more information?
Yeah, so head over to cureate.co. That's cureate.co. And then Instagram is the same at cureateco, cureateco. But those are the best spots: web, Instagram. We're also on Facebook and Twitter, but hit us up in the Instagram DMs if you want, direct connect or the say hello on the website.
That's great. Kim, thank you so much for coming on. It was a truly a
Yeah.
pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. This has been wonderful.
Take care.
Okay.